Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to 4Strategy Gaming. Have a strategy video for you today. We're going to be looking at a Terran strategy. Our player that we're focusing on today is Goody. The opponent in this matchup is Fingo. So what we're going to be taking a look at today is opening up with a 3 Hellion drop and then moving into a Marine tank push. This can be very effective. The idea, of course, is that you're going to try to hinder your opponent by doing some damage to their economy early in the game and then take advantage of the fact that they're behind economically with a strong push of basically a Marine tank heavy mix. And getting that siege mode up and having a nice little siege tank line, it can be really effective at denying an expansion, keeping them on one base, and subsequently winning the game. So the opening that we're going to see is going to be very standard, very typical fare. In fact, I'm taking a new direction here. This basic stuff at the very beginning, I'm just going to fast forward through this because really there's no reason to look at this. What we're going to be seeing very standard, going to be going at 2 times here. It's going to be the 10 depot, 12 barracks, 13 refinery, 16 orbital command. Very standard fare. This is the basic Terran opener that you're going to do most games. And then from that point, depending on your timing of the second refinery, that's going to determine how heavily you can tech up, how heavy of a Vespene build you can go from there. Moving out with the SCV Scout, you usually want to do that somewhere in the vicinity of 10 to 14 or 15 supply. That's going to allow you to get there early enough to see sort of any early aggression, early cheese, anything like that. So far, very standard stuff. Now, we're going to be moving back down to faster speed, and I'm going to tell you here that we're going to be sticking on one refinery for quite some time. Opening up with a Hellion drop, you don't need that second refinery, and I think a lot of newer Terran players, you can see here moving into the Protoss player's base, this is very standard. You do want to check for that assimilator. You want to see if it's there. In fact, there it is. So very standard stuff from the Protoss player. We're really not worried about anything out of the ordinary in the early stages of the game. When it comes to refineries, you really have to realize that unless you're going very Vespene heavy, like if you're going for fast siege tech with siege tanks, or if you're going for fast cloak banshees, a lot of the time you can stay on refinery for just one refinery for quite some time, and it actually does make quite a big difference because if you're able to stay on one refinery, it lets you get those extra resources by having those 3 SCVs on minerals as opposed to having 3 SCVs on a second refinery, and it's going to stop you from pulling up so much gas, and that's going to let you afford things. Now, again, you have to consider what type of build you're going for. Like I had mentioned, it looks still pretty standard stuff here from the Terran player. This Stalker here is obviously going to push back the SCV that's in the base, but when you're going for this build, we're going for Hellion drop really early in the game. So you have to think about what you're going to be spending resources in. Well, in a Hellion drop, most of my resources are going to be going to minerals because Hellions cost 100 minerals a piece. Now, like I said, say I was going for a Cloak Banshee. Well, a lot of the units that I'm getting would be pretty Vespene heavy. The Banshee itself is Vespene heavy, and then obviously the Cloak itself. But going for something like this Hellion drop, you can stick on one refinery. You can see here Goody is still on one refinery. He's at almost 30 supply, 5 minutes into the game right now, but still on one refinery because of his unit composition. Now, something else I want to make note of is that something like an early push from the Protoss player with pretty Stalker heavy could really hurt you in this build. Neither the Hellion or the Marine is that good against the Stalker. You really need Marauders or tanks early game to deal with Stalkers properly. So getting that bunker is going to be pretty crucial to save you from any early pushes. And the timing is going to work out here. I'm going to go over that build order timing. But the time is going to work out so that you're going to have the Hellion and the medevac out, the third Hellion as well as that medevac at pretty much the same time. And you want to move out with those 3 Hellions. That's the ideal number because it does take 3 Hellion shots to kill one worker. So if you can get 3 Hellions at the same time, it's 1 shot from all 3 to kill a worker or a group of workers, depending on if they're bunched up or not. And then at this point, at moving out right now, we're going to be transitioning into a tank build. So at that point, you want to get that second refinery, and just realize again that second refinery timing is going to really be dependent on what your early game units are looking like. Moving forward with the SCV, was trying to scout that expansion. Unfortunately, wasn't able to move in far enough, but not that big of a deal. Going to be dropping these Hellions right on the edge and then moving to the mineral line. Now the goal is to catch them in one big group. You're going to see if you can catch them in one big group, it's going to be a 1 shot there, as long as you can make sure you target fire them. And there you go, right there, 1 shot, all of those probes. I think there's about 4 probes or so. And now with Zealots, you can easily micro away from those, so don't be scared of those. But once you see Stalkers, it's going to be time to hightail it and head back home. And you can see there Goody did the damage that he needed to and then was able to push out. And let's take a look at that unit loss tab. You can see big advantage right now for us as a Terran player. So Goody managed to do a really good job. 12 units lost here for his opponent, 600 resources worth. So obviously at this point, Goody is in a good position. And here's that transition that I was talking about. Going to be moving from this point into siege tanks, getting that siege tech as well. and going to be getting ready for a Marine tank push. It's going to be very effective. Also, trying to continue up the harassment and do any subsequent Hellion drops is going to be really effective. Now, taking a look at this map, I want to note something very quickly. Here on Lost Temple, there is something very abusable at these basic bases right here. You can see here there's some space behind the base here, and the same thing is the case for right over here and right over here as well. When you are actually in this space, you are not visible by your opponent on the ground. So your opponent actually needs air vision to see if you have something like a medevac up here. Same is going to be true for hanging up a Banshee, or if you're Protoss hanging a Warp Prism up here, an Overlord. They actually need air vision to catch these spots behind the main bases. And again, same is the case over here and over here as well. So this can be very abusable, and we're going to see Goody take this into account and use this to his advantage later in the game. But let's pick it back up. So now that we're going to be going for those siege tanks and that siege tech, oh, look at that Cloaked Observer. Trying to pay attention for stuff like that. Easy kill right there. Definitely would be a little win, and obviously worth the scan as well. But again, we are on a second refinery right now because of that, the fact that we're going for a Vespian heavy build at the moment, going from that opening into the Hellion drop and moving into those tanks. We're going to need more Vespian. And then again, taking advantage of all of the damage that was dealt in that drop, you're going to see Goody come out with an expansion. Another really good idea. When you get advantages in this game, trying to capitalize on those is always a good idea. So if you get attacked, moving out with a counterattack, good idea. If you do economic damage, trying to add to your economy, good idea. And here we go, that second Hellion drop going down. And again, if you can get them in the line, you're going to be in a really good position. And what the F did I just do? I think I just fast forwarded the game 1 minute. So I'm going to go back real quick. Sorry, guys. When you hit F, it goes forward 1 minute. There we go. So bring it back down, back to 9, and let's pick it right back up. So again, if you can catch these probes right in this line right here, that is really, really good. Now, unfortunately, he's going to be shoot away from these stalkers and not target firing those probes. He wasn't able to do it, losing that one Hellion, but you do want to micro away what Hellions you have if at all possible. You can see here, looks like Goody's going to be checking for that expansion as well. Seeing that expansion, he knows exactly what's going on right now, and hopefully gets away with his one Hellion. Again, when it comes down to Zealots, when they don't have charge, you can just micro around them all day, and you actually shouldn't really take any damage from your Hellion. Now at this point, we're going to see Goody kind of amp up for an attack, and this is really, again, he's managed to hit the economy twice. That second attack wasn't quite as effective as the first one, but either way, it was damage dealing. He did manage to kill a couple units in there, so it still was kind of worth the attack. Now, after 2 Hellion drops, you can be reasonably sure that you're in a strong position as far as army size is concerned. In fact, let's take a look right there, and taking a look at it, you can see that Goody is at an advantage. Now, why is this obvious? Why is this inherently the case? Well, this is obvious, and this is the case because when you do economic damage, that reduces mining from your opponent, right? Okay, pretty obvious force. Don't really need to bang that one over my head. But the idea is that when you do economic damage, they can't afford as much of an army. And as such, you should be ahead in army size. If you can do economic damage to your opponent and you do not take any economic damage in return, you should be ahead in army size. So trying to take advantage of that with a push is going to be a good idea. So we're going to see Goody move forward. Going to put his tanks, not his teaks. Good force fields going down. Try to be careful of those. But he's going to try to put his tanks in a staggering position, put some behind and some in the front. Unfortunately, did lose that one tank. Now, luckily, with this heavy Marine build, he's going to be doing pretty okay. Does he have stim pack coming on? Unfortunately, no, he doesn't. That would be something to consider. Trying to get stim pack for this push could be effective as well. Saw some nice micro there, picking up that tank when it took some damage and then dropping it back down to do more damage and repairing it as well. And you're going to see this push is going to be effective. But primarily, aside from the micro, this push is primarily effective because of that inherent advantage when it comes to damaging your opponent's economy. Remember, if you can hurt your opponent's economy and you can capitalize on that by getting an expansion yourself and then pushing out when they're obviously behind in army size, then you could easily win the game. And at a high level of play, whenever you lose an expansion, it's almost always good game. In fact, we're going to see the opponent call good game very shortly here because he realizes he's got the tanks outside of his base, he's kind of contained at this point, and still being on one base, he's at a real disadvantage. And again, you can see over here, the Terran player Goody pretty well saturated at that expansion, so obviously economically big advantage for him, and not a whole lot at this point that his opponent's going to be able to do. And taking a look inside of the opponent's base, he's got a little bit of forces. Forward scouting SCV is going to get vision of the high ground, allow him to start shelling, but also having this medevac as well as these Vikings right here going to make it pretty much impossible for this player to do much of anything. Would be very difficult for him to respond. So the big problem here, honestly, for the Protoss player Fingo is the fact that he didn't respond with any damage. If you get something like Hellion dropped, you need to respond with some sort of damage if you do happen to take heavy economic losses, and that's something to consider. And you do see Fingo does call good game. So great game between these two players. Let's just do a little recap and take a look at that build order of those buildings early in the game. Alright, so let's just go over that build order as we finish things up here. We start off, like I said, pretty standard with that 10 depot, the 12 barracks, and the 13 refinery, then a 16 orbital command, and then from there we saw a first factory come down at 17 supply, and then the starport was at 24. Now as soon as that factory is up, you're going to want to start producing those Hellions, and then once that starport's up, come out with that medevac as soon as possible. And remember, up until this point we have been on one refinery the whole time, and that is quite easily manageable. So that medevac comes out, you're going to have those 3 Hellions out as well, then it's going to be time to do that drop. Remember, if you can get all of his workers lined up in one straight line, it's going to be doing as much damage as possible. Remember, it takes 3 Hellion shots to kill 1 worker, so if you can get 3 Hellions and all of them target firing the same group or the same individual worker, it's going to be a one-shot essentially. And then from that point, when the transition into tanks come, as soon as you finish up that Hellion drop, transitioning into tanks, that's when you're going to want to get that second refinery. Going to be able to, at that point, afford tanks as well as the siege mode. And then from there, considering to drop an expansion, we did see Goody went ahead and went out with that expansion right after that as well. Now, there's obviously, you know, this is an RTS. There's a million and one things that could have gone differently, and that's just how the game works. It all really depends on scouting and what you see your opponent doing and how effective whatever harassment you do is, everything like that. I mean, Goody didn't necessarily have to go for an expansion right there. After that Hellion drop, he could have very well done a small push at that point and tried to contain his opponent. That's a possibility. Maybe it wouldn't have been as effective, but, you know, your style, depending on how aggressive you like to play and the things you want to do, it's really up to you. But generally speaking, doing economic damage and then capitalizing on that by gaining more economy yourself and expansions, that's always a good, safe way to play the game. Do what you can to harass and then expand yourself. Do what you can to harass, expand yourself. Deny expansions, then get a third, you know, things like that. Always going to be a good idea. And remember, with additional expansions, you can afford additional buildings. You can see here Goody sitting right now on 6 production buildings, and that's pretty much what you want when you're on 2 bases, about 6 production buildings. So Goody obviously in the right spot. Being a professional player, I would expect him to be doing these things. So as always, guys, this has been Force from 4 Strategy Gaming. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. I'm happy to bring you another strategy video. I'm going to be headed to work later today, so no more videos, but I do believe, yeah, I had 3 commentaries and this 1 strategy video, so definitely a video-filled day for you. As always, if you like the content, subscribe to the channel and keep watching and keep owning. Though as soon as Kaz sees it in his base. So couple shots going down right now, killing off the SCV that was building that barracks, delaying that production just a little bit. Here we go, seeing that turnaround right now of that Viking, and we're seeing the Marines push up as well. Yes, we are. Big Marine push. Viking coming down, and that Banshee is a goner. No chance for him now. Couple more shots from that Viking, and that is the end of the game. Wonder if he's going to be trying to tail it back into his base to do additional damage. Pulling all the way down. Viking is going to catch it, and yeah, this is 1 dead Banshee. Unfortunately for him, no fancy maneuvering whatsoever is going to work. 1 more shot and few more Vikings coming down. So even if this 1 Viking wasn't enough of a hero, those little buddies of his would be. And look at this right over here. Nice little expansion hiding from Nama. Very interested. You know, I think the thing to note about this is that this is probably one of the last places that Kaz is going to check. When he continues to expand, he's likely to push into this high yield, and then over here.